Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just before I start, I've just learnt not to leave my computer on this desk because it seems that both the member for Goyder and the member for Gwodja have actually borrowed parts of my speech. Different parts, may I say. But yeah, I can't believe it. Anyway, so be it. It's often worth saying it again and saying it again. Occasionally people understand it. Madam Speaker, what an interesting MPI to speak to. Surely we have more important things to discuss in this parliament. Like, how do we fix up the 8-year mess left to us by a disastrous NT Labor government? How do we reduce crime, rebuild our economy and restore our lifestyle? These are the issues that Territorians want us to tackle. But no, this Teletubby opposition wants us to dance around the sun god and talk about the recent federal election, and they fancifully claim that this reflects voter sentiment against this CLP government. Well, I guess I'll have to succumb to Lala's, Dipsy's, Poe's and Tinky Winky's wishes and speak on this irrelevant MPI. Madam Speaker, like most people, I fully respect the decision of the Australian people and congratulate Prime Minister Albanese and his team for being re-elected to government. And I hope that over the next 3 years, he can help rebuild the Australian economy and create a better future for all Australians, including those living in our regional and remote areas such as the Northern Territory. And despite the fanciful request this morning from the member for Nycliffe that we all abandon the opportunity to strategically develop the East Arm precinct, I hope our NT Labor opposition will join this CLP government in holding the new federal government to account to deliver on its promise to support this strategic development for our country, along with its commitment to support the development of the Arafura Resources Project in Central Australia. As the Assistant Minister for Health, I also hope that this Labor opposition will get their member for Lingiari, the Honourable Mariam Scrimgeour MP, to deliver on her election commitment made on the 26th of April 2022, namely federal funding for 500 new First Nations medical trainees, 30 new renal clinics and the doubling of the funding for rheumatic heart disease. And now that the federal and territory elections are over for a number of years, I know our government will look to work constructively with the new federal government to deliver positive outcomes for the Northern Territory. And I hope this pragmatic cooperation will be reciprocated by the new federal government. Why? Because the development of the Northern Territory is in the national economic interests, including for our national security. Now, Madam Speaker, whilst we're looking at the federal election, let's reflect on the performance of the Greens. They have lost 3 of their 4 members in the House of Representatives, including their leader Adam Brandt from the so-called safe seat of Melbourne, where he had an 11% margin. Why did Australians vote against the Greens? Very simple, because they no longer understood what the Greens stood for. This was the party that now always wanted more than what was on offer, irrespective of the economic consequences. Australians could no longer accept this dogmatic approach of the Greens, which was, give us all we want or we will support nothing. They couldn't understand that many Australians recognise that something is better than nothing. And those Australians became fed up with academic, theoretical proposals divorced from economic reality. And as discussed yesterday, the Greens are backed up by and readily accept funding from a professional gambler. I do wonder how much he lost on backing the Greens this time. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to the NT result, and particularly for the seat of Solomon. Madam Speaker, there were certainly different issues at play in the federal election to that in the recent territory election. And with all due respect, there is no doubt there was a definite anti-Dutton sentiment impacting on the federal election across the nation. So let me, like the member for Guadja, congratulate all of the Territory representatives elected to the new federal parliament, including the member for Solomon, Luke Gosling MP. And let me thank all candidates who stood and contested the election as part of our cherished democratic system. I would personally like to thank our wonderful CLP candidate for Solomon, Lisa Bayliss, who gave a full commitment to winning this seat and only just fell short in a very tight contest. Lisa, you were a fantastic candidate, and I would encourage you to run again in the 2028 election. Having said that, Madam Speaker, it is important to note that the Northern Territory was the only state or territory around the country that had a swing to the coalition, as the member of Goyder pinched from me. The country swung 2.8% to Labor, and realistically, Luke Gosling should have increased his margin like the rest of his Labor colleagues. Instead, he went backwards by 7.2%. I say again, went backwards by 7.2%. Coming into this federal election, Luke Gosling held the 32nd most marginal Labor seat, as we've already heard. But now in an election where Labor picked up 16 seats, Mr Gosling now has the 6th most marginal Labor seat. If we look at the results, the 3 booths in my electorate, Karama, saw primary vote swings of 8.8% in the Malak booth, 10.9% in the Karama booth and 13.6% in the Karama East booth to the CLP respectively. And the general assertion that a vote for an independent should be considered a vote for Labor proved true. But I'm sure Territorians won't be fooled again next time. I also note that the member for Solomon, Luke Gosling, as has already been mentioned, was quoted, "I'm really happy with the support I have from the Prime Minister, and he's certainly indicated to me that he sees me in an assistant ministerial position after this election." Well, well, well. It turns out if you perform badly and almost lose your seat, you don't get rewarded. And the Prime Minister seems to have quickly reneged on this promise to the member for Solomon. So we've only got to hope that he can build up his influence within his own party. Finally, Madam Speaker, whilst I appreciate that the NT Labor's opposition are celebrating the win by their federal colleagues, I caution them not to take this as a prediction for the next Territory election. I advise the Leader of the Opposition that whilst focusing your attention on a win in Canberra sounds great, unfortunately it doesn't excuse your team for ignoring the residents in Karama, Malak and Nucky Lagoon, and those residents won't forget this long-term neglect. I also recall that the member for Fanny Bay relayed this morning how many residents from the neighbouring electorates of Nightcliff and Johnson come to her for advice because they feel neglected in their own electorates. And I can also confirm that I've had similar experience with some of these residents coming to me, as they now wish they had a government member. And yes, we won a 17 majority at the last election. But none of my colleagues take that for granted, none of them. As I've mentioned in this assembly before, I personally walked the streets of Karama, Malak and Nucky Lagoon to hand deliver my quarterly newsletter, allowing me to stay connected with my community along with all of my other engagement activities. My motto, which is printed everywhere on my signage, on my shirts and everything, is to be visible, to be accessible and to serve my community. I am fully committed to this. And I know my other government MLA colleagues are also fully connected with their electorates. And we are all committed to our plan. Here it is, our plan again. I'm going to put it up again. To reduce crime, rebuild our economy and restore our lifestyle. So yes, Madam Speaker, Labor had a victory in the federal election. But let's be honest, this NT Labor opposition has a long way to go to regain the trust of Territorians. And if they keep objecting to all the positive things we do and just trying to stymie it and say no, 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 then I'm sorry, I expect them to be further thrown out at the next election as well. So I do hope they change their tasks. I keep urging them to be constructive. I keep hearing that the Leader of the Opposition say, we're going to be great. You know, we're going to hold this government to account. That's fine. Holding us to account's fine, but don't get in the way of us delivering on our promise to Territorians and to our electorate. And I heard she also said she's going to come to estimates and she's going to get into things at estimates. That's great. So they should. But, you know, they seem to have a love affair with the member for Barkly, both the Leader of the Opposition and the member for Guadja. They both have a love affair with the member for Barkly. And they probably like him because he's so insightful and he's got a laser-like incisiveness in questioning people and looking at facts and figures. He actually reminds me of that wonderful federal speaker. I think it was the Honourable Bronwyn Bishop. And her attempts and her ability to get in to estimates and get drilled down to things. And I just think it's amazing. And I do want you. I certainly take on that. And if I'm involved in estimates, I'm going to use that as a bit of a role model. We're going to get in there and we're going to drill it. And we're going to hold people to account. But holding people to account is one thing. But don't get in the way of true progress and people really wanting to make... So on that note, I'll say thank you very much.